Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. It was an ordinary summer evening in our sleepy suburban neighborhood when the storm began to roll in. The wind howled through the trees, bending them like they were made of rubber, while dark clouds churned ominously above. My husband, John, and I sat in the living room, the gentle hum of the television barely audible over the storm's fury. We had always found comfort in the storms, believing that they were just nature's way of reminding us how small we were.
But little did I know,
that night would mark the beginning of a storm that would shake me to my core in a way I could never have imagined. I had always considered our marriage to be strong. John and I had been together for 10 years, and in that time, we had built a life filled with love, laughter, and shared experiences. Sure, we had our disagreements as every couple does, but we always worked through them. Our home was filled with the smell of fresh coffee in the mornings, soft music playing in the background, and the comforting presence of two people who were completely devoted to each other. But something had shifted in the last few months. It was subtle at first. John had become increasingly distant, his focus on his work growing more intense, his late nights more frequent. At first, I chalked it up to the pressures of his job. He was a successful attorney, and the demands were always high. But as time went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. There were moments when he would snap at me over the smallest things or withdraw into himself, retreating into his phone or the TV, as if he was avoiding any real conversation. And then there was Sophie. Sophie was our neighbor, a woman in her early 30s who had moved in next door just a year ago. She was friendly, outgoing, and always had a smile on her face. She was the kind of person who could light up a room with her presence. Joan and Sophie had become fast friends, often meeting for coffee or talking for hours in the yard. At first, I thought nothing of it. It was innocent enough, or so I told myself, but as the weeks passed, I began to notice the way John would look at her when she came over. There was something in his eyes that I couldn't quite put my finger on, an admiration, a longing, maybe even something deeper. It made my stomach twist in knots. I tried to push the thoughts away, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. But every time Sophie laughed or touched John's arm in a way that was just a little too familiar, that nagging feeling in my chest grew stronger, and then that night, the storm hit. The wind outside was so fierce that it rattled the windows, and the rain came down in sheets. John had gone out to the garage to check on something, leaving me alone in the house. I was curled up on the couch, a blanket wrapped tightly around me, when there was a sudden knock at the door. I glanced out the window, expecting to see a neighbor or a delivery person, but instead, I saw Sophie standing on the porch, drenched from the rain. I opened the door, surprised to see her there. "Sophie, what's going on? You're soaked." She gave me a sheepish smile, running a hand through her wet hair. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I was hoping I could talk to John. I've been trying to reach him." And before she could finish, John appeared in the doorway behind me. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw Sophie standing there, but he quickly masked his expression. "Sophie, what's wrong?" he asked. Stepping outside to join her on the porch, I watched as they spoke in hushed tones, their conversation too soft for me to hear. But the way they were standing so close, the way Sophie's hand brushed against John's, made my stomach churn. My heart sank, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. "Sophie, you should come inside," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "You're getting soaked out there." She hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. We all made our way to the living room, the storm raging outside. Sophie sat on the edge of the couch, her eyes flicking nervously between John and me. I tried to shake off the unease that was settling over me, but it was impossible to ignore. Something was happening between them, something I wasn't prepared to face. "I need to talk to you both," Sophie said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I think you should hear it from me, not anyone else." John stiffened, his brow furrowing.
What's going on, Sophie?
She looked at me for a moment, then back at John. I didn't want to do this, but I can't keep it to myself anymore. I've been seeing someone, and it's you, John. I've fallen for you. I never meant for it to happen, but I can't hide it anymore. The words hit me like a physical blow. My breath caught in my throat, and the world seemed to tilt around me. I looked at John, searching his face for any sign of disbelief, any hint that this was some kind of mistake. But instead I saw guilt. Pure, unadulterated guilt. I felt my knees go weak, and I collapsed into the chair behind me. My mind raced, trying to process what I had just heard. Sophie had fallen for my husband, and he hadn't told me?
How long had this been going on?
Was it just an affair of the heart, or had something physical happened between them? I never meant for this to happen, Sophie said, her voice breaking. But I can't keep pretending that everything is fine. I've told John how I feel, and he... Stop, I cut her off, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and heartbreak. Just stop. I stood up, my hands trembling as I faced both of them. John was looking at the floor, unable to meet my gaze. The storm outside seemed to mirror the chaos inside me, the fury of the wind matching the rage that was bubbling up inside of me. How long? I demanded, my voice rising. How long has this been going on? How long have you been lying to me, John? I'm sorry, he stammered, his voice weak. It wasn't supposed to happen like this.
You're sorry?
I laughed bitterly, tears streaming down my face. You've been carrying on a secret relationship with my neighbor, and you're sorry? Sophie's face flushed with shame, and she stood up, her hands raised as if to defend herself. I never wanted to hurt you. I never meant to come between
you two, but I couldn't help how I felt.
I looked at her, the woman who had once been my friend, the woman I had trusted. And you thought this was the right way to handle it? Coming here, telling me in the middle of a storm? Please, don't do this, John pleaded. I never wanted to hurt you. I've made a terrible mistake. I couldn't hear him anymore. I couldn't look at either of them. I turned and walked out of the room, my heart breaking with every step I took. I needed air. I needed space. I couldn't breathe in that house, not with them both there, not with the truth hanging heavy in the air. The storm outside raged on, but it was nothing compared to the storm inside me. My world, once so stable, was crumbling, and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. That night, the storm didn't just rage outside. It tore through my heart, breaking everything in its path. I didn't know how to fix it.
I didn't know. If I wanted to,
the man I had loved, the man I had built a life with, had crossed a line that I wasn't sure could ever be undone. And the woman who had once been my friend had become the symbol of a betrayal that I couldn't escape. The danger hadn't been the storm. It had been the storm in my own home, the one that had come not with the wind and rain, but with the lies and the broken trust. And in the aftermath, I wasn't sure if I could ever rebuild what had been shattered that night. The following days after that storm felt like I was walking through a fog, unable to see clearly, unable to think straight. The weight of what had happened pressed down on me, suffocating every moment. I went through the motions of life, eating, sleeping, working, but it all felt hollow. The world outside seemed to carry on as if nothing had changed, but I was trapped in this new reality where my marriage, my trust, my sense of security had all been shattered beyond repair. John tried to apologize, of course. He sent me texts, left me voicemails, but every word felt hollow. I didn't want to hear it. What could he possibly say that would make any of this better? The pain was too raw, too fresh. The guilt I saw in his eyes wasn't enough to undo what he'd done, and the desperate apologies felt like a Band-Aid on a wound that needed stitches. Sophie, too, tried to reach out. She showed up at my door a few days later, her eyes red from crying, her hands twisting nervously at her sides. I had no desire to open the door, but somehow I found myself standing there, staring at the woman who had once been a friend. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing by telling you. I know it doesn't make it better, but I thought you should know. I never meant for any of this to happen." I looked at her, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd once trusted, the woman who had been a regular guest in my home, who would share glasses of wine with me on lazy Sunday afternoons, but that version of Sophie was gone. In front of me was a stranger, a woman who had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. "You should leave," I said, my voice cold and distant. "I don't want to hear it from you. I can't even look at you right now." Her face crumpled, and I felt a flicker of guilt. Was I being too harsh? But the thought disappeared as quickly as it came. I couldn't afford to care about her feelings. Not anymore. She nodded silently, stepping back and turning away. The door closed with a soft thud, but it felt as if it slammed against the foundation of my life. The quiet that followed was deafening, and I collapsed onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. The tears that had been building up for days finally came, and I let them fall freely, feeling the weight of my heartbreak, my anger, and my confusion. I had no idea how to fix this, or even if it was fixable. The storm outside may have passed, but inside, the devastation was still raging. John came home that evening, cautiously stepping through the door, as though he wasn't sure what kind of reception he would get. I didn't even look at him when he entered. I couldn't bring myself to. The sight of him, once so familiar, now felt like a betrayal. "I know you're angry," he began, his voice hoarse. "But I need you to understand. I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened. I don't know how or why, but I didn't think things would get out of hand." "Out of hand?" I echoed, looking at him finally. "You're telling me it just happened? Is that what this is? That you just stumbled into an affair with my best friend, and now you're asking me to understand?" His face flushed. With shame, his eyes darting around the room, as if he couldn't bear to meet my gaze for long. "I was stupid. I was weak," he said, the words coming out in a rush. "I thought I could keep it under control, but I couldn't. And now I realize how much I've hurt you, and I'm so sorry. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. How long?" I asked, the words choking me. I had to know. I needed to know the truth. How long has this been going on? John hesitated for a long time, his hands trembling at his sides. "A few months," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "It started off as nothing, just some late-night talks, a little too much wine. But it turned into something else. Something I couldn't control. Something he couldn't control." The words felt like a knife in my chest. "A few months." That meant that for months, he had been betraying me, hiding his feelings for her, sharing moments with her that should have been mine. While I was sitting at home, trusting him, believing in us, he was out there with her, building something behind my back. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said finally, my voice thick with emotion. "I don't know if I even want to try." He nodded, his face sagging with the weight of my words. "I understand. I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I don't know how to fix this. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." But the damage was done. I didn't believe him anymore. I didn't trust him. How could I? That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts swirling like the storm outside. I kept replaying every moment in my head, trying to understand how this happened. Where had I gone wrong? What had I missed? How had I failed to see the signs? The next few days passed in a blur of numbness. John left for work early and came home, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Sophie stayed away, as if she knew that she couldn't repair the damage she had caused. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to move forward. I thought I knew who I was, who John and I were, but the truth had turned everything upside down. What did I do now? I kept thinking about the storm, about how it had raged outside, seemingly unrelenting. But it was nothing compared to the storm. That was now inside me. The rage, the hurt, the disbelief. It felt like it would never end. That one evening, a week later, John sat me down, his face pale and drawn. I can't keep doing this, he said quietly. I love you, but I also realize that I can't pretend nothing happened. I've destroyed what we had, and I don't know if it's possible to rebuild. I stared at him, not knowing what to. See, the love I once felt for him was still there, but it had become tainted, twisted by everything that had happened. Maybe we need time apart, I said slowly, my voice barely audible. Maybe we need to figure out if we can even be the people we were before. Because right now, I don't think I even know who we are. He nodded silently, his eyes filled with tears. We didn't speak for the rest of the evening. The storm had passed outside, but the one inside us both was far from over. Weeks passed since the storm had swept through our lives, but the quiet aftermath felt almost unbearable. John and I hadn't quite decided what to do, though we both knew something had to change. The tension between us was palpable and spoken, yet so heavy it filled every room. Despite the anger and betrayal that had shattered everything, there was still a spark of something lingering beneath it all. And I wasn't sure if it was love or something darker, but I could still feel the pull toward him, just as he seemed drawn to me. There was an undeniable force between us, a magnetism that neither of us could completely escape. For all the pain he had caused, John still had a place in my heart. He was still the man I had once shared everything with, the man who knew me better than anyone else, the man who had once kissed me with a tenderness that had made my heart flutter. But now it was different. One night, the air between us shifted. I had been avoiding him as much as possible, refusing to engage in any meaningful conversation. The silence had become unbearable, but we didn't know how to break it. Then, out of nowhere, John walked into the living room while I was reading. His gaze locked onto mine, and there was something in it, something desperate, something raw. I can't keep pretending, he said, his voice rough. I know I've hurt you, but I still want you. I still love you. I looked up at him, my breath catching in my throat. His eyes were dark, haunted by regret, but there was something else in them, something I couldn't ignore. He stepped closer, and I didn't move, though my pulse quickened. I know I don't deserve it, he continued, his voice growing softer. But I want to prove that I can be the man you need, the man you deserve. Please, just give me a chance. For a long moment, I couldn't respond. Part of me wanted to tell him to leave, to walk away and never come back. But another part of me, something buried deep inside, still wanted him. Still wanted to believe in the love we had shared, the love that felt like it had been torn apart but not entirely destroyed. Before I knew it, he was in front of me, and without a word, he gently cupped my face in his hands. His touch was tentative, unsure at first, as if he was afraid I might pull away. But I didn't want to. His thumb brushed across my cheek, and I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth of his touch flood through me. And then, as though some invisible barrier between us shattered, his lips met mine. It wasn't a gentle kiss, nor was it a desperate one. It was a kiss that felt like everything we had lost was pouring back into us. The love, the passion, the years of memories that had built us together. It was as if our bodies knew each other's rhythm, knew the language that words couldn't express. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer, and for a moment, the world outside didn't matter. The storm inside me, the hurt, the anger faded away, and all that was left was the overwhelming sensation of him against me. His lips were insistent, desperate, and I found myself kissing him back with the same intensity. My hands threading through his hair, pulling him closer. He groaned. Softly, his body pressed against mine, and I could feel the heat radiating from him. I could feel the tension, the years of passion that had been simmering beneath the surface, waiting to be unleashed. It was as if our love had never truly died. It had simply been buried under the weight of betrayal, waiting for a chance to surface again. His lips trailed down my neck, his breath warm against my skin, and I shivered. The sensation was electric. The desire, the hunger, the need, everything that had been stifled by months of silence was suddenly rushing back, overwhelming me. He pulled away for a moment, his eyes dark with desire, searching my face for some sign that I was still with him, still wanted him. I love you, he murmured, his voice low and husky. I've always loved you. I know I've ruined everything, but I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. And in that moment, I believed him. My heart, which had been so full of anger and pain, softened. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive him, but I couldn't deny the pull that still existed between us. The love wasn't gone. It had been twisted and scarred, yes, but it was still there. I nodded, my fingers tracing the line of his jaw, and before I could say anything, his lips were on mine again. This time the kiss was deeper, more urgent, as though we were both desperate to reclaim what we had lost. His hands roamed over my body, pulling me closer, and I responded in kind, my own hands eagerly exploring the familiar contours of his body. The body I had once known so well. Clothes became a distant memory as we tangled together, the world outside fading into nothingness. There was no more storm, only the storm we had created between us, a whirlwind of passion and longing. Every kiss, every touch felt like a promise, a plea for redemption. We moved together, our bodies desperate to reconnect in ways we hadn't. In so long, Dot, it was a night of passion. Yes, but it was more than that. It was a night of reckoning, of acknowledging everything we had been through, and everything we could still be. We were broken, yes, but we were also still alive, still capable of love, still capable of desire. Afterward, we lay there in the dark, tangled in sheets, the air between us thick with unspoken words. I could feel his heartbeat against mine, steady. And for a moment, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back. Maybe we could rebuild what had been broken, but I knew that it wouldn't be easy. Love, after all, was never a simple thing. It was messy, complicated, and sometimes it hurt. But in that moment, with his arms wrapped around me, I let myself believe that we could find our way through the storm. Together, the storm outside had long passed, but I knew that the one inside us, inside me, was far from over. The road ahead would be difficult, and the hurt would linger. But there was still love, still passion, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope that maybe we could survive this, if we were both willing to fight for it, Dot, and so we did.